is H.V. Kaltenborn with a report on the coming New York World's Fair. First, we go to the City Hall and to the mayor of our great city, the Honorable Robert F. Wagner.
The New York World's Fair will begin in 1964 and will continue through 1965. This coincides with the 300th anniversary of the founding of the great city of New York, and we invite all of our friends throughout the United States, Canada, from all parts of the world to come and visit this great fair. Because not only will this be a terrific attraction, but New York City itself is a great attraction, and at that time we will have open our great new Lincoln Center, which will be the cultural center of the world. Our new arterial highways will make it easier to get to the fair, and once you're at the fair, I know it will be an experience that all Americans and all visitors will be proud of and think of for many years, and I'm sure will help in the struggle we all go through for world peace in a weary and tired world of today.
The fair will be ideally located. First of all, this part of New York and its sister state, New Jersey, comprise one of the greatest metropolitan areas in the world. New York City alone, with its 5 boroughs, has a land area of about 320 square miles. Of this area, here is the geographic center. Close to it is New York City's population center. And here, ideally located in the very heart of the city, is Flushing Meadow Park, the site of the New York World's Fair for 1964 and 1965. Flushing Meadow Park is today an oasis of peace in a great city, but it was not always so. Once, where these trees now stand, rose mounds of ashes and refuse. In place of grassy lawns, there was a swamp. Then, by a heroic effort, all was changed. The swamp was drained. 30 years' accumulation of refuse and waste was towed out to sea. The Flushing Meadow became the site of the first New York World's Fair. Now, 20 years have passed, and the old fair is just a memory. The 1939-40 fair had a storybook magic about it that delighted everyone. Architects had let their fancies run, and enchanting shapes proclaimed a wonderland. This was going to be fun. President of the Fair Corporation was Grover Whalen. Its chairman of the board, Harvey D. Gibson. And at a cornerstone laying was a man named Robert Moses, landlord of that fair. The year, 1938, a scant decade since fateful 1929. The world was ready for a holiday. Fair was open, come to the fair. And they did. By train and plane, by sea and land, by washtub auto and paddle canoe, they came to the fair. The Kew Gardens Loop was opened and the cars poured in. The parking fields were big enough to handle any crowd, or so the planners thought. But on October 6, 1940, Newspaper Day was held and thousands of cars jammed the lots. But nobody seemed to mind. The fair was on, and the music was simply grand. Everybody got into the act, from Mayor LaGuardia to Milton Berle. It was a happy time. There were a dozen big shows. The Aquacade delighted everyone. Star of the show was Eleanor Holmes. There were stars in the audience, too. In fact, there were celebrities everywhere. But the fair wasn't all glamour and frivolity. In the second year, the American Common was dedicated, and Lieutenant Governor Charles Poletti spoke for the cause of peace. There were the exhibits, the finest in industry and culture from all over the world. Everything from tomato meeting of skills, industry, and the arts. At night, there was another kind of exhibit. Alice had her Wonderland and Dorothy her Land of Oz. But New York had the fair, and it was pure enchantment. On October 27, 1940, the New York World's Fair closed forever. It had been an earthly paradise, all too brief. Today, the meadow is once more quiet. The trees have grown to lovely maturity. The paths where millions trod bear the scars of age. The voices of multitudes and the sounds of music are gone from Flushing Meadow, but not forever. For work on the new fair has already begun. At the New York City building on October 27, 1960, Mr. Robert Moses, president of the New York World's Fair Corporation, arrived for the day's work. He is interviewed by John Tillman.
How are you, Commissioner? Nice to see you again, sir. If you don't mind, I'd like just to take a moment here to ask you a few questions about the 1964-65 World's Fair. Suppose we start out by asking, what is the overall purpose of the new fair?
Well, the overall stated purpose is education for brotherhood, and brotherhood through education. That's fixed in the law, in the Articles of Incorporation, and in the agreement with the United States Treasury. This has to be an educational institution to get tax exemption.
Mm-hmm. Now, physically, Commissioner, what will the new fair look like, do you think?
Well, physically, it will look not unlike the 1939-1940 fair, only better, bigger, taller buildings, same space.
What part will New York City have in the new fair?
You mean the city administration?
Yes, sir.
Well, the city exhibit will be in this building here, in the city building. And it will be one of the several exhibits. There'll be state exhibits, there'll be a federal exhibit, exhibits of domestic exhibitors, industries, foreign exhibits.
And on the domestic level, will there be some very fancy and very expensive exhibits by American industry?
No question about that. There'll be more elaborate exhibits, there'll be more modern exhibits, there'll be more costly exhibits than at the last fair.
What do you feel will be the overall results of the 1964-65 fair, the effect on the world and so forth?
Well, it's very hard to answer that. Aside from amusement, aside from attracting people to New York, benefiting New York by bringing a great many visitors here from the hinterland and from abroad, I think it's likely to have a very substantial effect on international affairs, because the people meet here on common ground. There aren't any ideologies involved. There's no diplomacy involved. They simply bring their best products and exhibit them. It's just like an Olympic Games, excepting it applies to industry and business.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, for taking a little time out here from your busy schedule. And we have lots of work, and see you again. Thank you very much, sir.
As president of the Fair Corporation, Mr. Moses attends meetings of the corporation's executive committee, the group responsible for making all the top-level decisions. Present at this meeting is Mr. Thomas J. Deegan, Jr., chairman of the executive committee. Mr. Bernard F. Gimbel, chairman of the organization committee for the fair. Mr. Charles F. Brucey, attorney at law for the Fair Corporation. General William E. Potter, executive vice president. Mr. Wallace K. Harrison, chairman of the board of design. In addition to its own meetings, the executive committee meets at other locations, like New York's Metropolitan Club, to preside over the Fair Corporation's board of directors. On the board are some of New York City's most distinguished names in advertising, public relations, radio and television, transportation, publishing, and the arts. Let's see what plans these men have made for the New York World's Fair. The fair will occupy 646 acres. In addition to the lake area, there will be 4 other exhibit areas: industrial, international, federal and states, and transportation. Let's consider each in turn. For the industrial exhibits, work got underway at the New York City building on August 4, 1960, where representatives from leading United States manufacturers gathered for a briefing. Hundreds of industrialists were there, representing almost 200 United States companies. Opening remarks were made by Mr. Stuart Constable, Operations Vice President for the fair. Mr. Constable introduced Mr. Moses, who emphasized the importance of the new highway program to provide adequate transportation to the fair.
These aren't just lines on a map. These things are being constructed. The money is there to build them, and they're the key to the success of the fair.
Mr. Deegan's topic is of particular interest to purchasers of Fair Corporation notes.
Has been characterized as the $6 billion sale, in that we hope that that is the amount of money that will be poured into this metropolitan area during 1964 and 65.
Now, General Potter described the corporation's administrative.
The people who head those divisions in this organization are brilliant, they're driving, they're most competent.
Mr. J. Anthony Pannock, Vice President in charge of industrial, federal, state, and special exhibits, gave basic information.
Space will be allocated on the basis of the promptness with which plans for exhibits and requests for space are submitted.
Many companies filed for space within a few days after the meeting. Response was quick and enthusiastic. By March 1st of 1961, almost 1/2 of the space in the industrial area had been committed. Invitations for the international exhibits have been presented to governments, industrial and cultural groups all over the world. On August 14, 1960, the first visiting team left for overseas. Led by Charles Poletti, Vice President of International Exhibits, the group went to Turkey, Greece, Austria, and to Yugoslavia for a visit to the Belgrade Fair. Various other activities have publicized the New York World's Fair. In Spain, publicity on television. In Italy, a press conference and an audience with Pope John. A panel discussion in Scandinavia. Receptions in Bolivia, Peru, and Costa Rica. Uruguay, Colombia, and Ecuador. A meeting in Israel with Prime Minister Ben-Gurion, in Russia with Ambassador Gromyko, in Germany with the State Secretary, and in Poland with the Vice Minister. And worldwide participation was urged by the Honorable Adlai E. Stevenson, seen here with Mayor Wagner and Commissioner Richard C. Patterson, Jr., member of the Fair's Executive Committee. By March 1st of 1961, 22 foreign countries had announced participation in the international area. In this area, our own federal and state governments will have their exhibits. Federal participation was assured by President Kennedy on February 1st in a meeting with Mr. Moses and Mr. Deegan at the White House. and 3 ex-presidents of the United States, Herbert Hoover, Harry S. Truman, and Dwight D. Eisenhower, have added their support as honorary chairman of the fair. And Nelson A. Rockefeller, governor of the state of New York, invited all of the states to exhibit and appointed Lieutenant Governor Malcolm Wilson to develop plans for the New York State exhibit. The transportation exhibit section of the fair will be under the supervision of the Port of New York Authority. For this report, let us hear from the chairman of the authority, Mr. Sloan Colt.
On 80 acres at Flushing Meadow Park, we are bringing together America's great automobile, airline, maritime, railroad, bus, truck, and aerospace industries. And the millions of people who visit the fair in 1964 and 1965 will enjoy the unequaled transportation facilities of the Port of New York. The great new terminal now under construction at LaGuardia Airport, magnificent New York International Airport, Newark Airport, the heliports at 30th Street and the Wall Street area, and the great complex of railroads, highways, and new bus terminals will play an important part in transporting visitors to this great fair.
The 3 airports have served 14 million people in a single year. By water, New York City piers handle 1 million ocean-going passengers a year. By railroad, a vast network serves 120 million people annually. From the north, the New York Central and the New Haven. From the south, the Pennsylvania. And in its run from the east, the Long Island Railroad passes directly by the site of the fair. A new station will be built here on the site of the old one to serve the new fair. By rapid transit, the city's subway system carries 4.5 million people in a single day. Of the 3 lines that run to the general area, 1 will serve the fair directly. Subways, airports, buses, ships, and railroads all are of vital importance in transporting visitors to the fair. But New York's other transportation facilities will make the Flushing Meadow one of the most accessible places in the world. Now, first construction for the fair got underway. Ground was broken for the new administration building on August 4, 1960. Under an accelerated program, prefabricated steelwork went up in a few weeks, and concrete for floors was placed. In just a little over 5 months since groundbreaking, the administration building was completed. On this day, January 11, 1961, the new administration building would be dedicated, and the new Throgs Neck Bridge across the East River would be open to first traffic. This great bridge will be a vital link in the network of arteries to the fair. On the Bronx Plaza, hundreds gather to celebrate the dedication. Distinguished officials now cut the ceremonial ribbon, and the Throgs Neck Bridge is officially opened. Hundreds of cars form a cavalcade for the trip to Flushing Meadow and the new administration building. First traffic over the bridge. From the bridge, the cavalcade speeds along the new Clearview Expressway, then makes the turn into the Long Island Expressway. Millions of visitors to the fair will travel this identical route. Now the cavalcade reaches the new administration building. Here, in a temporary tent set up for the occasion, the fair played host to over 1,000 guests, city and state officials, and ambassadors of many foreign countries. This event made news, and reporters filed their stories at the scene. In charge of press, radio, and television for the fair is Vice President of Communications, Mr. William A. Burns, talking here with Mr. Sidney M. Shapiro, General Manager of the Long Island State Park Commission. After the luncheon, guests visit the model room to see an exact scale replica of the fair grounds. As buildings and exhibits are constructed, they will be added in miniature to the model. An important feature of the fair will be its theme symbol, to be built by the United States Steel Corporation. Here on February 14, 1961, contracts were signed with the fair. By this agreement, the United States Steel Corporation, represented here by Mr. Roger M. Blau, Chairman of the Board, will present to the Fair Corporation the theme symbol called the Unisphere. This is a giant world globe of stainless steel, 13 stories high, that symbolizes man's achievements in an expanding universe. But the fair is not the only great event planned for 1964. Here, on New York's west side, is being constructed the great Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts. Here will be a center for the symphony, ballet, drama, and the opera. This will be the home of the New York Philharmonic, the Metropolitan Opera, the Juilliard School of Music, and schools of drama and music, all united in perhaps the grandest cultural project ever conceived. At work on the project are some of the finest architects, musicians, and city planners in America. Chairman of the board of Lincoln Center is John D. Rockefeller. Under his leadership, construction of the center began on May 14, 1959, with the groundbreaking ceremonies. President Eisenhower spoke of the importance of the center.
Here will develop a mighty influence for peace and understanding throughout the world. I pay sincere tribute to your vision, your effort, your energy that is creating the Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts.
And so the city prepares for 1964. The Lincoln Center and the fair will be partners in jointly sponsored programs and leading, just as there is a park here today after the old fair, so will there be a park after the coming fair. A new, restored park, more beautiful than before. A permanent feature of the park will be the Unisphere, the symbol of our theme. And this is the theme of the New York World's Fair, that the nations of the world will unite in showing their skills, inventions, arts, and aspirations, and in so doing will educate the peoples of the world to know their dependence on one another, and so create peace through understanding. This is H.V. Kaltenborn.